Today, I'm going to quickly explain what dynamic range is in music. Let's take a look at this waveform. This is how a typical waveform from the early days of music would have looked like. You can clearly see the difference between loud and quiet elements in the track. This relation between low and high volume is what we commonly call dynamics or dynamic range. Dynamic range is very important in music because of the way our hearing works. The thing is, in order for something to be perceived as loud, something else has to be quiet. You might say that our hearing needs a frame of reference. It's like looking at several mountaintops on the horizon, and they're almost equally tall. It's then very difficult to say which one is the tallest. When a track becomes overly compressed, the waveform tends to look like this. You probably recognize it, right? This track has been squashed, like most tracks these days. It's been heavily compressed and limited. In order to understand how this works, we need to understand how a compressor works. A compressor is actually very simple. It does exactly what its name suggests. It compresses the signal. When a compressor does this, it reduces the volume of the loudest elements. A makeup gain is then added to bring the overall volume back up. Depending on the amount of compression, the dynamic range is decreased accordingly. The difference between loud and quiet becomes less and less. Here we have some nice guitars, some drums, some pads. Right now, it's very dynamic. You can clearly distinguish the loud elements from the quiet ones. Now, let's compress this track to the limit. The dynamics are gone. It's louder at the expense of quality and dynamic range. There's no real difference between quiet and loud anymore, and this is dramatically affecting the way we perceive the sound. In a way, you can think of dynamic range in a track as the texture. It's all about those tiny but important details that tend to get lost when a track is overly compressed. Compressors can be quite useful when used on vocals, for example. A singer will typically sing with a great variable of intensity throughout the track. A compressor can then help make the overall intensity more even. If some words are too quiet and others too loud, the quiet ones will be increased and the louder ones will be reduced, resulting in a balanced mix. But as any tool, compression can also be abused and overused. Today, we use compression on just about everything, like drums, bass, leads, and so on. Compression can be used to control the apparent fullness of a sound. It can be used to control the transients as well as the body of a sound, to make it crisper or fatter. So simply put, dynamic range in music is basically the difference between the loudest and quietest parts of the song. In a heavily compressed track, the difference between the loudest and quietest elements will be small. In a dynamic track, the difference will be much greater. A dynamic mix can sound more lifelike, and drums will often sound crisper and punchier overall compared to an overly compressed mix. Imagine a pianist. Some keys will be hit softly, and others quite hard. This radically changes the way it's perceived. And this variation in velocity and timing is what brings emotion into it. Here's an example. And here's the same recording, quantized and all velocities reset to default. Did you notice how flat and lifeless it became? Dynamic range works in much the same way. When a track is overly compressed, it kind of sucks the life out of the music, and every sound has almost the exact same perceived loudness. A whisper can be just as loud as someone shouting. There's no texture and no variation anymore. As I said before, in order for something to be perceived as loud, something else has to be quiet in comparison. It is true louder generally sounds better, but it's also true that when everything is great, nothing is great. Now don't get me wrong, compression isn't all bad. Quite the contrary, compression can actually do a lot of good. It can make sounds appear warmer, and drums can be made to sound crisper and more impactful. It can also be a lifesaver when it comes to vocals and such. But it must be applied correctly so that you get the right balance between dynamics and compression, especially when it comes to mastering. So with that in mind, why do people still overcompress their music? Well, today we're actually much better off overall because popular streaming services such as Spotify have now introduced a loudness ceiling, ensuring that all music has the same perceived loudness. Loud tracks will get quieter and vice versa. This means that there's really no point in trying to win the loudness war anymore. And that is a good thing. Unfortunately, certain genres of music today are still quite overcompressed with a severely restricted dynamic range. And I think this is a result of the fact that this has gone on for such a long time now that this overly compressed sound has simply become part of how that type of music tends to sound now. I think people are afraid to release anything that's too dynamic compared to the competition, fearing it will make their music sound out of place and just too different overall. What do you think? Is there a way out of this? Or perhaps you prefer that compressed sound? Let me know in the comments below. If you need professional feedback on your music, mastering, and so on, then check out the links below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button if you like this video. And as always, let us know in the comments below what kind of tutorial you would like us to make next. Thanks for watching.